Good evening and thank you for joining us. Hundreds of workers at the local Bombardier plant are scheduled to be laid off this month due to the lack of contracts. And despite the looming layoffs, the company hosted a community open house today to show its pride in the facility. Ian Kaufman has the details.
It was a bittersweet occasion as Bombardier welcomed members of the public to tour its Thunder Bay facility. Rounds of layoffs begin next week at the plant, with about 200 workers set to leave. By the end of the year, over 500 will be gone as the plant's two major contracts with Toronto and Go Transit expire. With only a few months' worth of work left for remaining employees, the plant's future is uncertain. Dave Black, general manager at the site, says despite those challenges, the company and its employees are proud of the Thunder Bay facility.
This site has had a turnaround the last 2 years. And we provide all our cars to Toronto on time, and the quality is second to none. And we've had good feedback. The Toronto TTC has commented on the deliveries, but the quality of the cars, how they get them in revenue service really quickly now. So we're very proud as a team of that.
The open house was expected to draw up to 2,000 people. Hundreds were already there shortly after the doors opened. The event included a barbecue and activities for kids, but the main attraction was a tour of the production facilities where Bombardier has operated here since 1993.
When they walk through the site, they're going to see right from our concept of how we build a car. They're going to go through the engineering models, then they go out into the shop and they're going to see the bi-level cars that we build here, and they're going to see the LRV trains. They're going to experience a train ride. They're going to go through our testing process. They're going to see our people actually engaged in doing some work on the LRV cars.
Black says the company continues to talk with all levels of government to try to secure additional work for the Thunder Bay plant. He says Bombardier has also moved some work from the company's other sites to Thunder Bay in the meantime. Ian Kaufman, TBT News.
Fire crews were kept busy overnight battling a fire that caused extensive damage to a Southside home. Thunder Bay fire rescue crews were called to the 200 block of Bethune Street at approximately 11 p.m. last night. Crews traveling to the scene saw smoke from blocks away, and a second alarm was then called. 22 firefighters worked through the night to contain the fire to the one structure. Efforts were hampered by the age and construction type of the home, and personal belongings also affected access to the fire. There were no reports of any injuries. The fire has since been brought under control, and the cause is unknown and currently under investigation. You've likely seen trucks transporting giant wind turbine parts throughout the city, and Port Authority officials say that will likely increase over the coming years. CEO Tim Heaney recently made a presentation to City Council. He identified wind turbine projects in Western Canada as the biggest opportunity for growth at the port over the next 5 years or so.
There's major projects that will start next year, shipping through the port to Alberta and Saskatchewan. Following the election and the focus on green energy in the West, you're going to see that as becoming even larger than it's scheduled to be right now. So we could see up to 20 ships a year with just wind turbines through the port. It would be significant work for us. So people will see a lot of those going through town for the next 4 or 5 years.
As for the current shipping season, the port is on track to move about 9 million metric tons of product, putting it on track for its most successful year since 2014 and continuing its strong overall performance over the last 6 years. And in Dryden, their council was faced with a full agenda last Monday. Councillors were set to vote on a controversial bylaw, but the motion was pulled at the last second. Councillors also discussed the implementation of a hotel tax like many other municipalities in the region have done. Ben Nesbitt has more.
It appears that a controversial zoning bylaw amendment and expansion to a local business in Dryden is on hold for now. The amendment would allow for the Dryden Community Funeral Home to expand and install a crematorium on site. The proposal was met with backlash from many who live in the nearby neighborhood. But before council could vote on the matter, it was pulled from the agenda by the proponent. Mayor Greg Wilson says by all accounts, the funeral home followed procedure.
They didn't have anything to lose by just letting it go to a vote tonight, but I think they just took the high road, the high ground, and they want to be uniting this community.
But the project isn't done yet. Kayla Jonason says they are now looking at a different location in the city. However, they will have to go through the same procedures as before.
The next step is we'll have to go through zoning amendment again, therefore another public meeting. We'll have to go through that process again, and then we go on to all the emissions testings that we already had done at this location. We'll have to do it again at the next location, and then on to the Ministry of Environment as well as the Bremen Authority of Ontario.
Council, however, still had several big-ticket items to vote on, including funding $25,000 to hire a youth center coordinator. In September, Council was asked to fund the position after a very successful summer at the center. Council is funding a total of 50% of the position, with the remaining 50% coming from the KDSB. Council also voted in favor of implementing a 4% municipal accommodation tax. Wilson says while some on council have suggested using the money to fund parts of the youth center, he has another idea.
If we took some funds and used them for promoting our ball diamonds, our soccer pitch, just our different sports facilities, so that we could maybe host tournaments that haven't been hosted before in this area.
The MAT will come into effect January 1st. Ben Nesbitt, TBT News.
Thunder Bay isn't the only place that students from the far north come to further their education. Students from some communities are attending class within the Superior Greenstone District School Board too. Indigenous learning tools like the medicine wheel and displays of traditional tools, instruments, and teachings line the walls and hallways in classrooms. Director of Education Nicole Morden-Cormier says working with Indigenous partners is incredibly important, and making sure the students who travel from their home communities in the north are comfortable and safe is a top priority for everyone.
So right now we currently work very closely with Martin Falls, and we have a number of students from Martin Falls who attend school at the Geraldton Composite High School. That is a core piece of the work that we do, is serving all of our students and meeting the needs of all of our students, particularly when we're thinking about students flying in or coming from different First Nations.
And for many of those students, food can bring them home. A number of Thunder Bay organizations held an event this week with one goal in mind: to make sure Indigenous residents and visitors can access the same food their people have eaten for centuries. Corey Nordstrom has more.
Goose, partridge, and moose. While they make for ideal staples in a community feast, governments have put many obstacles in place to when they can be served at such an event. On this day, members of the Indigenous Food Circle, along with the District Health Unit and many other groups, gathered to show that to First Nations people, food is more than sustenance, but a spiritual connection to the land.
We really want ministries to understand that cultural connection, that it's important for us to have less legislation on ours, or an understanding that we can serve and eat without these big strict guidelines.
In addition to the homegrown feast, a question period allowed those in the room to gain more insight from the Health Unit and MNRF on serving and obtaining wild game. Chef Rich Francis calls these regulations ridiculous, saying in this day and age, Indigenous people shouldn't have to jump through hoops in order to serve what they've lived off for centuries.
I still have to hide to serve moose meat. I still have to hide to serve beluga whale. Through cultural genocide, we're trying to find something very positive here. If we're going to reconcile, let's do it properly. We're in 2019. It's unacceptable that we're in this position.
For the last 2 years, the District Health Unit has been working with 14 First Nations communities to establish their own food sovereignty.
Previously, it was very kind of restrictive and limited in a sense, but what our health unit has done now has really made it a lot more simple. It's more flexible, and it's definitely more supportive. So the goal is really to figure out how we can support them to serve wild game, and not so much can you serve wild game or not.
Corey Nordstrom, TBT News.
Starting tomorrow, Canadians can enjoy an extra hour of sleep as the clocks fall back with the end of daylight saving time. The time change will happen at 2 a.m., so remember to move your clocks back by 1 hour before going to bed tonight. Fire services say changing the clocks is a reminder to also check smoke and carbon monoxide alarms to ensure they're working, and to change batteries if necessary. Under the fire code, smoke alarms are required on every level of a home and outside every sleeping area. Tyler,